A very good afternoon to you, dear viewer in Kenya and around the world. My name is Maina and I do welcome you to this edition of Live, a program that analyzes evocative global stories making headlines and which have an impact on you, the viewer. As always, our focus is on politics, health, education, as well as arts and culture. But first, a look at the stories making headlines around the world. And we start off with Theresa May warning Parliament, back me or risk no Brexit at all. Embattled UK Prime Minister Theresa May has warned that a failure by lawmakers to back her Brexit deal risks the entire venture being cancelled. May has come under fire from huge sections of her own Conservative Party over her deal and is facing a revolt ahead of Tuesday's scheduled vote on her deal in the House of Commons. However, in an interview with the media on Sunday, May insisted that if members of her party were to rebel, it will leave the country in uncharted waters. May is facing pressure from some sections of her party over her deal, particularly the backstop arrangement for the Northern Ireland border. Moving on to China, the Chinese Foreign Ministry is planning to summon the US and Canadian ambassadors in protest over the detention of a Huawei executive in Vancouver, describing it as a lawless and extremely vicious action. The tech giant's chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou was arrested December 1st and faces extradition to the United States, where she is accused of helping Huawei circumvent US sanctions on Iran. In a statement on Sunday, China's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs Liu Cheng said the US ambassador to China, Terry Branstad, is being summoned over Beijing's strong protest against the US's unreasonable direction to Canada of retaining the Huawei executive. Li said China would like the United States to revoke the arrest warrant against Meng and allow her to be freed. In an earlier statement Saturday, summoning Canadian Ambassador to China John McCallum, Li said Meng's arrest severely violated the Chinese citizens' legal and legitimate rights and interests, and also termed it as lawless, reasonless, and ruthless, and extremely vicious. The statement also warned Canada of serious consequences if it doesn't release Meng. I can't breathe. These were the final words uttered by Jamal Khashoggi after he was set upon by a Saudi hit squad at the country's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, according to a source briefed on the investigation into the killing of the Washington Post columnist. The source, who has read and translated transcript of an audio recording of Khashoggi's a painful last moment, said it was clear that the killing of October 2nd was no botched rendition attempt, but the execution of a premeditated plan to murder the journalist. During the course of the gruesome scene, the source describes Khashoggi struggling against a group of people determined to kill him. The transcript notes the sounds of Khashoggi's body being dismembered by a saw, as the alleged perpetrators are advised to listen to music to block out the sound. This revelation to increase pressure on the Trump's administration, which has been determined to separate Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from the murder, and sought to frame the issue as a binary choice between supporting or cutting off a key partner in the Middle East. US President Donald Trump has been at odds with the CIA, which sources say has concluded bin Salman personally ordered the killing. The revelations also threatened to undermine a key alibi of an initial Saudi explanation for Khashoggi's death, that it was a rogue operation that went horribly wrong. And we remain with that story of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was allegedly murdered by the Saudi government in what is widely suspected to be his continuous critique of the Crown Prince Mohammed Al Salman government through his column in the Washington Post. Though this happened in Turkey, miles away from Kenya, the death of Khashoggi has triggered a debate into the freedom and protection of journalists all over the world, including Kenya. This has happened at a time when various journalists in Kenya have reportedly received threats over their lives, as well as being attacked in the line of duty, attacks that have roped in state officials and politicians. According to the World Press Freedom Index 2018 prepared by the Reporters Without Borders, Kenya is ranked position 96 out of 180 countries in terms of freedom accorded to journalists. In this ranking, Kenya has fallen way below regional counterparts such as Tanzania at position 93, Togo at position 86, Mauritania at position 72, Malawi at position 74, Niger at position 63, Madagascar at position 54, and Senegal at position 50. This brings us to the question, who are the Jamal Khashoggis of Kenya? Is the government an ever-present threat to media freedom and security of journalists? Let me know your comments on this issue by joining the conversation online on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Maina, or on Facebook, Maina, #MMLive. A look at some of your comments. Sam on Twitter at Sam2015 says, the easiest way for a Kenyan journalist to court trouble is to critique the government. More and more journalists are today moving away from political reporting and into softer fields such as health and law reporting. Keep the tweets coming, as well as the Facebook comments. I'll sample more of them later. Still on the death of Jamal Khashoggi, our correspondent Sharon Kabiru has filed this report on how it is like to be a journalist in Kenya.
It is not unusual to see Kenyan journalists busy with their equipment in various environments, chasing stories with the aim of keeping Kenyans informed. The freedom that Article 34 of the Constitution guarantees them ought to make their work easier as they seek to keep the public updated on the latest happenings around them. However, gathering news is not always a straightforward process as it often seems. Behind the determined faces of journalists lie stories of intimidation, harassment, and active threats on their lives. Some of these threats are from politicians as well as state officials who feel journalists are out to damage their reputations. Victor Kinuthia, the Royal Media Services correspondent in Murang'a County, has borne the brunt of the conflicts that have come with devolution.
Thank you, Sharon, for that informative report. You have been on the ground following this story for some time now. Any new developments?
Well, Mercy, as much as laws have been and policies have been put in place, we've still seen journalists such as Jamal in the recent case continue to be targets. We've seen journalists get hit even with the press cards by police in brutality. And those who died, Mercy, have not received proper persecution. The perpetrators, have not received proper persecution, and we've seen them walk scot-free. And it is sad because laws have been put in place to protect their interests and themselves as individuals as they cover their different aspects and jobs as required. And Mercy, very few of these perpetrators have actually been brought to book, and most of them we've seen that they've walked scot-free. And this brings us to the main question, Mercy. What's the point of having laws and policies to protect journalists if when they go to the field it is not adhered to, and they still face the same brutality even with their press cards? They are beaten, the equipment is confiscated and all that.
And to shed more light on this issue, I'm joined by a panel of 3 experts. My first guest is Eric Odwal, the Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Journalists. My second guest is Ken Bosire, the Managing Editor of the People Daily newspaper. And I'm also joined by Victor Bwire. He is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Programs Manager at the Media Council of Kenya. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Let me start with you, Eric. Who are the Jamal Khashoggis of Kenya?
So in the past 5 years, we've had 2 deaths of journalists that have been recorded. One is John Nyaruri, and there's one, this not John, it's John Kitui, and there's another one called Nyaruri. Those are deaths that have been recorded in Kenya. Let me talk about the past 10 years. Kitui was killed purposely by people who were trying to beat the cause of justice, and also in relation to the post-election violence. And this is the death that occurred when we still had, the time we had cases at the ICC. So Nyaruri was very critical on the process at the ICC, and had done a lot of work and writings on the post-election violence. Then we also had Nyaruri, who was a correspondent in Kisii, who was abducted in Kisumu, and later on his body was found at Kodera Forest. And Kodera Forest is very popular, where Sharon was found. A journalist's body was also found there, that is Nyaruri.
Eric, still on you, have these murders been resolved, and if not, what are the hindrances?
If you look at the statistics that are there, only 1 out of 10 cases actually are successfully prosecuted in court when it comes to journalists who have been attacked or killed. So far, no justice actually has been done for journalists who have been killed or tortured. The only cases where we've seen success were those cases of journalists who were tortured by at Nyayo torture chambers, where the government was found guilty and they were supposed to be compensated. That was Maina and But when it comes to prosecution, it's only 1 out of 10, actually, or 2 out of 10 that actually prosecuted in court.
Thank you, Eric. Let me come to you, Ken. From a management position in the newsroom, what is the nature of the threats that the journalists receive?
Any individuals who have been attacked, the case is courtless, but we still remain vigilant. And some of it, what is interesting is that the political temperature in the country also dictates the freedom that we enjoy. When there are these very divisive, very tense moments, journalists become actual victims. They get branded, you belong to this kind of thing, you belong to this kind of grouping. So in that way, they're exposed to a lot of attacks, especially during elections. We have journalists who have been under attack and we've had to try and protect them. For instance, in the 2007 general election, we had to, the media houses that do evacuations of journalists who were under threat because of what they were perceived to be. Their names betrayed them. So we had to try and do these things. But journalists were caught up in that thing. And part of it, some of them ended up being framed as being instigators of that violence. And rightly and wrongly, I think it was somebody said what needed to be said.
Having said that, what are some of the steps that you are taking to ensure that your journalists in the field are safe?
Every day that I brief them, I debrief them, and we have, as a company, an insurance system. If anybody falls on the wrong side of the law, we have our legal team that follows our business. But we also invest in what we call safety in training. We're training our journalists on how to be safe, because there's no story that is worth anybody dying for. So we train them. We have these interactions. The Media Council has got programs, and we send them to other organizations to understand what these safety concerns are, because the world out there is wide, and we try psychologically prepare them to go out, so that when they are going out, we make sure that they understand the environment they're going into and how to make an exit when it's necessary. But of course, we also make follow-ups where we know there are dangerous things. We try to protect their identity, because there are stories that are very sensitive that we will not use their violence, because then they easily get pointed out.
And to wrap this up, we are joined by Victor Bure from MCK, the body that is mandated to protect the privileges of journalists in Kenya. Kenyan governors have become notorious for harassing journalists to an extent of preventing them from covering their events. What are you doing about this?
Yes, so we have done several dialogues with the county government leadership through what we are calling the town halls and media security dialogues, to ensure that state officers understand the role and place of journalists in their work. So is an ongoing work that we are doing. We have visited several counties. We have written to the Council of Governors over the issue of safety and protection of journalists, and we continue engaging.
What is the way forward for media freedom in Kenya?
Freedom does not come easily. And like we have said many times, journalism is not for the faint-hearted. So the struggle continues. It's not a phenomenon limited to Kenya. And where journalists are doing work on accountability, transparency, and watchdogging, those difficulties are expected. I'm telling you that we have already reached out to police. They have established a focal point who will coordinate the issue of safety of journalists. The office of the DPP, we are having a meeting again to establish a focal point, or a desk that will specifically deal with the cases that relate to protection of journalists. We have reached out to media owners. There's a safety protocol, the 10 points charter, which all media owners have signed upon, committing themselves to ensure that the journalists work in safe environments and safe protection. So these are ongoing things. It's not easy.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to the program. I appreciate your time. Let me sample some of your feedback. From Facebook, Ezeli Washira says, I appreciate the efforts MCK is making to protect journalists in Kenya. However, we need to focus on preventive measures to ensure that we do not have more Jamal Khashoggi cases in Kenya. At Maina is my Twitter handle, and Facebook it's Maina, #MMLive. All said and done, it is unfortunate that 55 years after independence, we are still dealing with cases of threats against journalists and media freedom in general. It is a shame that Kenya, a country that boasts of expanded democracy, is becoming a concern for international media freedom watchdogs due to the increased threats and attacks targeting media people. It is time that the Kenyan government walks the talk of Article 34 of the Kenyan Constitution that guarantees freedom of the media. More saddening is the fact that despite all fingers in the deeds of journalists pointing to a certain direction, no case has been prosecuted successfully. At the end of the day, a threat to a specific journalist is a threat to the entire media fraternity and a threat to the civil liberties of Kenyans as a people. My name is Maina, and that's the bottom line.